Hi, I'm Dianna DiNoble of Starker's Corsetry, and I wanted to talk to you today about two things that are near and dear to my heart and my brain: running a small business and having a brain with ADHD. What I want to talk to you about may also help with organization for people without ADHD who just want a better way to self-delegate easier situations and emergency situations. I've been the owner of my small business, Starker's Corsetry, since the early 90s and run almost every aspect of the business myself with an ADHD brain. So what is ADHD? ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is sort of a crummy name for what I find most of the time to be a superpower. We all get a little disorganized or forgetful sometimes, but ADHD is a daily struggle to use the tools that we've either adapted or learned, hopefully, to stay on task and not let the details fall through the cracks and miss parts of our day or our projects. We don't actually have a deficit of attention, we just have a hard time regulating it. Approximately 11% of North Americans have some form of ADHD, and I've had it since I was a child, but I wasn't diagnosed with it until recently. All of the signs were there: spacing out in class, report cards that had 54%, 98%, and nothing in between, dropping out of high school, re-enrolling in school just to skip class and start my own business. Some of the most amazing athletes, entertainers, and innovators also have ADHD. Jessica McCabe of one of my favorite YouTube channels, How to ADHD, said it perfectly in her TED Talk. We don't only think outside of the box, we're not even aware that there is a box. I explained it to my kids who inherited my ADHD as, imagine we have bunnies in charge of our attention. Some can hear sounds, some can smell smells, some can think of stories. Neurotypical people have about 5 or so, and people with ADHD have dozens of bunnies. Imagine trying to keep them sitting in a line. This can be crazy chaotic. It's hard to organize all the bunnies, one looking at the window, two are planning lunch, another is anxious about a noise they just heard, and maybe one is paying attention to the task at hand. You give them a fresh bunch of carrots, and they're suddenly all focused on the same thing. Once you know how to get them all pulling in the same direction, unimaginably cool things can be done with your brain. Yes, it's weird, but who doesn't love the idea of trying to organize bunnies into paying attention to one thing at a time? We just need to find out what that carrot is. My ADHD allows me to hyper-focus on everything from detailed stitch work, beadwork, to bookwork, taxes, website maintenance. Most of the time I can direct it, but occasionally the pull to do beadwork is a little stronger than the pull to do bookwork, and it's usually at the worst possible times. It all sounds like running a small business should be the last thing a person with ADHD should be doing, but a high percentage of entrepreneurs are found to have ADHD because the drive to go out on a limb and do something crazy and impulsive and hope that they can support themselves and create something that the world would want is very much typical of ADHD. It's constant mental stimulation, it feeds our hyperactivity and impulsiveness at the best of times. Also, my father, who most likely has ADHD, has been running his own hairdressing business for over 40 years, and he's the person who I credit most to teaching me the tools that I use to keep myself organized, despite wanting to lose myself in creating furniture for my guinea pigs when I have impending deadlines. Every Sunday night, my dad would do his bookwork without fail. This was non-negotiable, scheduled, and sacred. He had people counting on him to pay the rent, order supplies, pay the bills, and send out paychecks. This taught me that the time must be booked and expected and set aside for necessary tasks. My dad's technique of routine worked beautifully for me for years. My husband even called me the general because he could set his watch by my schedule. Monday was pattern drafting and fittings. Tuesday was fabric shopping and sewing. Wednesday, fittings and website maintenance. Thursday, sewing everything in sight. Friday, cleanup and bookwork. Saturday, fittings and sewings. And if I was lucky, I would take Sundays off. Then we had kids. I was prepared though. Izzy was due at the beginning of December, so the third week of November I was ready to ship my last corsets, and then I would enjoy a month of maternity leave before I would book new clients. Izzy was born early. In fact, she was born the morning that I was supposed to drop the corsets off at the post office. That's pretty much the sort of unpredictability that I face daily, in addition to sleep deprivation and general new mom brain and postpartum depression. That was a trifecta for a worst case scenario for ADHD. especially when I counted on my predictable schedule to keep the details of my business running smoothly. The schedule that I relied on so heavily was gone, and I even forgot what a Wednesday was. The 10 minutes at a time when the baby was sleeping, I spent trying to recover from the previous 3 hours of ear-shattering screaming rather than sewing. And when my husband came home, I would hand the baby off to him and sew for hours. But I found myself falling asleep at the sewing machine more than a few times. It was a really difficult couple of years. So we did what was clearly the sane choice and had another baby. Wash, rinse, and repeat, and my beautifully regimented schedule was a thing of the distant past. I was suddenly feeling like I was dodging bullets and putting out fires and not in any way control of my schedule or my business. But I kept things moving because I switched to a new method of triaging my time. When I would have a whole glorious hour to work, I would figure out what was the most pressing issue, bookwork or client deadline, and I would dedicate that hour to the most important thing. This worked in a pinch during the most difficult years. Never, even at the worst of times, was a deadline missed. Sometimes as a small business owner, you have to prioritize your clients' deadlines over your precious sleep. Many times I was almost hallucinating with sleep deprivation, but off to the sewing machine I would go at 3 a.m. in the morning because I had a client counting on me to make a wedding dress, and they weren't about to change the date of their wedding because I needed a nap. I chose that, and to run a small business, you gotta be ready to choose that too. Fortunately, the kids got older and started school and daycare, and my life came back little by little, my time came back little by little, and my organization tools came back little by little. Even now with a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, I'm lucky enough to be able to schedule my day around having tea time with them and help them with homework after school. But working until 10 or 11 p.m. at night is what happens more often than not. The tools that I found to be most helpful now that my schedule needs to be a little more modular than to be able to schedule it day by day is to keep it in a book. I have a book with each client's order information in plastic sleeves so I can write on it with dry erase marker with the status of their order. At the beginning of the day, I'll make a list of who needs patterns drafted, who needs fabric cut, whose fittings are coming up, and what fabric I'm waiting on. I can do a daily, wider lens, calmer triage that I can plan around rather than putting out fires. This is ideal when my ADHD is able to control. These are during times when daily exercise, proper nutrition, and sleep are all in a happy alliance and things are running smoothly. Then there are days like this past week when deadlines are looming and projects are stacking up, so obviously the thing to do is make cute furniture for my guinea pigs, decorate pasties for fun, and then I'm way off the rails. Or days when my anxiety is sky high and I don't want to get out of bed. Days like that, when I know I'm not driving the ADHD bus and the bunnies are out of control, I just have to lower my expectations first. Sometimes taking an hour to play with Swarovskis can open up more time necessary for patterns later. Sometimes making guinea pig sofas and playing with my pets will give me the boost that I need for the next 6 hours to be sewing. Sometimes giving the bunnies what they're craving works. Sometimes even just being kind to myself and allowing a day where I put in 25% is really okay. It's better than nothing, and really it just signals that I might be burnt out, and taking a day off or taking it a little slower can make things better tomorrow. Another emergency tactic that I use when it's time to clean my workspace, which I never want to do, is to put away 10 things. People who have ADHD have famously messy workspaces, and I'm not an exception to that rule. 10 things aren't a big deal. It's easy enough, and even the most resistant brain can accomplish this. I start with scissors, then fabric, and coutil, and lace, and suddenly, by the time I'm at about 6 things, I want to keep going because having a clean space is a little bit infectious, and before I know it, my space is clean. One of the most important rules for my ADHD is daily exercise. A bazillion studies have been done on ADHD and exercise, and they all point to the benefits. It can clearly benefit anyone, ADHD brains or otherwise. But for me, I can't human, let alone run my business without it. My rule is that I can't shower until I exercise. Also, I have terrible hair, so I can't go without a shower. Ergo, if my exercise is my only route to my shower, then exercise happens early and daily. Rules like this for ADHD brains, not permitting yourself, not a treat, but a necessity adjacent thing, like a shower or charging your phone or having a coffee, but only after your goal is done. So when you do find yourself in a triage situation, you can't function, and you don't feel like you're in control, and you're not feeling prepared for your deadlines, it's time to troubleshoot. Are you sleeping okay? Sometimes anxiety comes free of charge with ADHD, and it can keep us up at night, hyper-focusing around a problem. Are you eating healthy? Healthy food just makes your body and brain run at its best. If you take meds for ADHD, have you been remembering to take them? Or maybe you need your prescription readjusted. Are you exercising regularly? This is my biggest ADHD must. Daily exercise has been proven to have one of the greatest positive impacts on ADHD management. This can also help improve the quality of your sleep if you're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. Are you having enough fun? Have you put away your work for a little while and switched into that well-rounded human that you are and started paying attention to your actual life? Are you burnt out? Have you gone out with friends or family and laughed? So these are the organization hacks that I use for myself and my small business to keep things from coming apart at the seams. These can be used by anyone, ADHD brains or not, running a small business or not. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and leave me a comment and let me know how you keep yourself organized. Bye for now. Another emergent... Thanks. How to organize that video when your neighbors are hammering and doing construction.